Welcome back. We're going to look in this segment at the structure and the functioning of the human brain. Now, we could spend hours and hours talking about how your brain functions, what it looks like, the different things that the brain controls, and we still wouldn't even scratch the surface of what we know or what we even think that exists in terms of the functionality of your brain. For matric, you need to know the simple functioning of three basic areas in the brain. And so let's have a look at those particular areas. We already have learned today that the brain is enclosed in a bone box, which we call the skull. And we know that that skull is pretty hard. I'm sure you've been banged on the skull quite a few times and your brain hasn't suffered any injury because your skull is a very, very effective protection box around the brain. But the brain and the spinal cord are also surrounded and protected by a set of three membranes called the meninges. And the brain then is bathed in a supporting fluid that fits or floats between these meninges, and that is called cerebrospinal fluid. And that acts as a shock absorber that if you did get hit on the side of your head and your brain did move inside your skull, it's protected by this shock absorbing fluid and these pretty tough membranes called the meninges. You may have heard of an illness called meningitis. Meningitis is an inflammation or an infection of those brain protective membranes. Your brain is divided into what we call two hemispheres or longitudinal halves. If you've studied geography, you'll remember that the Earth is divided into a northern and a southern hemisphere. Now, I don't want you to think of the brain as a top and a bottom, but your brain is divided into longitudinal hemispheres, which means that there is a mid-division down the brain and there is a left and a right hemisphere rather than a north and a south hemisphere. And the three parts of the brain that you need to be able to identify where they are and what they do are the cerebrum, which is certainly the biggest part of your brain, the cerebellum, and the medulla oblongata. So let's find those on our picture of the brain. This part of the brain that's indicated here in this light pink color, that is your cerebrum. Tucked underneath towards the back, right, you would be able to feel where that bump of your skull goes out a bit. That's your cerebellum. And tucked very deep inside at the level of your ear, in line with your nose, if you were to draw a line backwards and kind of right down the middle where those two lines met, you would find the medulla oblongata right deep inside your brain. So let's focus on the cerebrum, which is kind of going to be occupying that space inside your head. It is this typical grey tissue that you see on diagrams, and you can see that it's all folded, deeply folded and fissured in order to increase the amount of surface area and pack a large amount of brain tissue, nerve tissue, into the inside of the skull. The cerebrum controls all voluntary muscle action. So any locomotion, movement of your hands, speech, all of that is voluntary muscle action. It also receives and interprets information that come from your sense organs. So it processes information from your eyes, for example, from your ears, and it allows you then to voluntarily respond in an appropriate way. Your cerebrum is also responsible for higher mental activities such as memory and your intelligence, your reasoning and your judgment. And very often we say that this part of the brain which makes up the cerebrum, particularly this part here in the frontal lobe, that is what distinguishes you or other humans from animals, because this is the part of your brain that animals do not have. They don't have this ability to mentally reason or to behave in an intelligent way. I know grade 12s that some of you might think that this part of your brain isn't working, but maybe it's just a bit dormant and you need to exercise it a little bit more. The cerebellum is the smaller part here at the back of the brain. If we're looking forward here, then this part is at the back of the brain. The cerebellum controls and coordinates movements of the muscles so that when you move forward, your body is coordinated and it's balanced. It also collects information from joints, the inner ear, to help you work out body position and keep all your movements smooth so that you do not overbalance and your body works in a left-right coordinated fashion. The medulla oblongata is this very important central part deep inside the brain, and it is the part that controls involuntary muscles, and it conducts information from the spinal cord to the rest of the brain. Next week, we're going to be looking at structures of nerves and reflex arcs. I hope to see you then. Goodbye.